This is the Elegoo Centauri Carbon, a fully enclosed CoreXY 3D printer running Elegoo OS out of the box. It's got 500mm per second max speeds, hardened steel linear rods, and a build volume of 256mm cubed. Out of the box, setup took around 18 minutes to complete. If I didn't struggle plugging in the screen, it would have been less. After setup, I ran through the self-calibration process, which took another 30 minutes. One thing I noticed right off the bat was that this thing is loud. Like sitting in an airplane before takeoff loud. I think you get the point. After calibration was over, I loaded up some Sunlu high-speed PLA and began printing the pre-installed Benchy. On close inspection, the Benchy turned out well considering the sub 20-minute print time. There was a bit of minor stringing, but the overhangs came out surprisingly well. The first layer had a slight case of elephant's foot, and the embossed text on the bottom didn't come through super well. But for a pre-sliced object, it's a solid result. After seeing the results of the Benchy, I immediately changed to Voxel Lab PLA and began printing a Nintendo Switch handheld grip. But as you can see, it didn't turn out the way I was expecting. Between some rough slicing, poor bed adhesion, and gradual wobble that turned into full spaghetti, the model shifted layer by layer until it just gave up entirely. But even in the mess, there was a silver lining. The hinge section actually printed great, so while the print didn't survive, at least one feature did what it was supposed to. If I were to print this again, I'd change the orientation, apply some glue, and add a raft for good measure. Stepping up from PLA, I decided to try some ABS. I ran this one in Hatchbox ABS. Strong, reliable, and honestly one of the best ABS brands I've worked with. With the lid and front door closed, chamber temps held steady, it was ready to print. For this print, I decided to make a fence-hanging sprinkler that I designed on SolidWorks. The print came out solid, threads screwed together like butter, and the inner and outer holes looked clean. There were a few imperfections near the openings, probably seam artifacts, and a more noticeable elephant's foot on the base, but for a usable preset on Orca Slicer, I'll give it a passing grade. Next, I wanted to put the most abrasive filament I own through this machine, ASA carbon fiber infused. This stuff is insane. It's UV resistant and a pain in the butt to work with if you don't know what you're doing. To put it to the test, I sent my print-in-place combination pliers design to the printer. I've tried printing these pliers on my Bamboo Lab P1S before, but it just couldn't handle it. Even with glue and a clean plate, nothing stuck. The Centauri Carbon, on the other hand, nailed it on the first try. There's a visible layer line where the infill transitions to solid layers on the handle, but the spring action works perfectly. The matte finish looks great, and the part feels sturdy. For the next print, I threw on some Elegoo Rapid PETG. I've never used this filament before, but since Orca Slicer had a profile for it, I thought it would be a good test. The model I chose to print is called the Chain Spoon. It's a spoon, but with a chain instead of a handle. I chose this design as it has many overhangs and complex patterns. The printer handled the geometry surprisingly well. Bridging was excellent, and the articulated links printed cleanly. There were some minor imperfections on the pillars, probably from seam placement, and a bit of over-extrusion inside the bowl, but overall it came out solid. To wrap things up, I printed a wearable TPU belt paired with an ABS buckle. The belt was printed in Polymaker TPU 95A. I ran the belt at 30mm per second, my go-to speed for TPU, and while it got the job done, there was some noticeable stringing and bubbling around the inner contour. I also forgot to custom place the seam within the slicer, so there are a few visible artifacts along the edge. The ABS buckle came out great. It handled a 30mm overhang with no issue, and the print-in-place hinge worked right off the bed. And just listen to those satisfying clicks. From high-speed PLA to flexible TPU and carbon-filled composites, the Centauri handled a wide range of prints with only a few rough spots. But how does it stack up overall? Here's a quick breakdown of what impressed me and what didn't. The Elegoo Centauri Carbon came fully assembled right out of the box. The setup was easy with clear instructions, prints all the major materials. The price point is extremely competitive for what you get. It's compatible with third-party slicers, And there are plenty of mounting points for mods and upgrades. Here's what I didn't like. It's loud, especially during fast moves and cooling cycles. The time-lapse feature is inconsistent. I only got one to work out of the 20 prints that I did on this thing. Since there's no active chamber heater, it can limit high-temperature filament performance. The PTFE tubing is tight near the extruder, and it's tricky for flexible filaments. After 2 weeks of testing, I'd say the Centauri Carbon is a solid intermediate printer with a surprising amount of capability. It's fast enough to compete with the bigger names, but at a price that almost feels like it's kicking them in the shins. It's a great choice for anyone looking to deepen their understanding of additive manufacturing. You still have to slice your own models, tune print settings, and handle maintenance, which, depending on your perspective, is either a downside or a really valuable learning opportunity. It's beginner friendly, but not to the point of being oversimplified. If you're coming from something like Bamboo Lab, manually slicing files might seem tedious at first, but long term, it teaches you a lot more about your machine. For hobbyists who already know the basics and want something reliable that leaves room to grow, this printer absolutely fits the bill. It's far from perfect, like we covered earlier, but what it does well, it does really well. At the end of the day, the Centauri doesn't just look good on paper, it definitely earns its spot on the market.